Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
Going good. We are in our second season here. The premise of the show, of course, is kind of like the title says. We share films or TV shows that we've loved with our co-host who has never seen it. So this week, I had picked a movie that Casey has never seen. That is one of my I really enjoyed the comedy Horrible Bosses. That's the movie we will be talking about today. Um, which is a 2011 comedy directed by Seth Gordon, written by Michael Markowitz, John Francis Daley, Jonathan Goldstein, and starring Jason Bateman, Charlie Day, Jason Sudeikis, Jennifer Aniston, Colin Farrell, Kevin Spacey, Donald Sutherland, and Jamie Foxx. Had a budget of around 35 to 37 million and had a box office of 209.8 million dollars, and
I
it
think
premiered July 8th, 2011.
I think most of that budget probably went to the actors and actresses.
Yeah, pretty stacked cast, right? Like for only 35 million as well, like that's a great deal. Of course, like some of these I would say like this is Sudeikis during SNL or right after he left SNL. Um, so he probably wasn't like super expensive, but like Aniston, Farrell, Spacey, Jamie
Yeah,
Foxx, Bateman, pretty big cast. Um, so let's before we kind of dive into it, I'll kind of give my history with the film, which was I'd actually seen this in theaters. So like I told you off air, I'm adding a new stat when we get there called films we've seen in theaters. This is a plus one for me. Um, this was right up my alley. I had kind of been going to see comedies a lot. Like I went to see Borat in theaters with my grandmother. Don't recommend that. Went to see
oh, that was probably very interesting.
went to see Super Bad in theaters. Pineapple Express. So those were a couple years before this movie. This was 2011, and as you know, Casey, I'm a big Arrested Development fan. My favorite comedy
I don't know what I
sitcom.
expected.
So Jason Bateman immediately sells the movie to me. I was a big Friends fan, so Jennifer Aniston sells the movie for me. I was getting into It's Always Sunny around this time, so Charlie Day sells the movie for me. And I loved Sudeikis. He was one of my favorite SNL people at the time. So this movie, and I was a Spacey fan until that stuff came out. So I this movie, like immediately I'm like, all right, I love these names. It's a comedy. Let's go see it. And I really enjoyed it. And I ended up buying it. I own it. Not as big on the sequel. Um it's hard to recapture this, I think, when the premise is so unique. Like how do you do that again type of situation. So yeah, but this movie I really enjoyed it when I went to the theater to see it. How about you? Have you ever heard of it? What was your knowledge of it before, you know, this week or whatever?
So, before we get there, let's say Kevin Spacey is a prime example of loving the art but not liking the artist. He, especially seeing in this movie, he is a fantastic example of that.
Yeah,
He was a great actor. I think my all-time favorite movie of his, for me, is The Usual Suspects,
right.
which was outstanding. American Beauty was great. He was great in this. I never got a chance to see it, but apparently, it wasn't House of Cards was people
It was a
really love
really
that.
really great show, House of Cards. That was one of the things that really made me other than this, because House of Cards came out right after this, pretty much a year
And
or two
then
later, but loved it.
I don't know how accurate it is. Apparently, that was probably the first algorithm, from what I heard. I don't know how accurate it is. that might be like the first algorithm based thing that was made because Netflix has all this data from people watching stuff that found out people of Kevin Spacey were also fans of this guy and who enjoyed, they
Mm.
also enjoyed movies and stuff made and written by this person and so on and so forth. So then they figured out, okay, if we can get all these things together, we might be able to have a hit on our hands. Now that might not be true. That was something I had read a long time ago. Um, but from what we know about like Netflix now, that sounds like it could be accurate,
Yeah.
right? Um, but you never know. But yeah, like I said, he's a fantastic example of loving the artist, not so much. So 2011, I knew of most of these people. I had heard of Kevin Spacey, obviously Jamie Foxx, Colin Farrell, Jennifer Aniston, Jason Bateman. I maybe had heard of Charlie Day or kind of recognized him because I still haven't watched It's Always Sunny. The only thing I've ever watched from It's Always Sunny is the clip. I finally had to look up the clip from old crazy Charlie Day there with the board behind him
Oh yeah, yeah.
with all the strings connected to it. So I had to see what the hell that was about because I've seen that meme so many times, and it's a hilarious clip. And I think I told you this before. I just binged and caught up with Abbott Elementary,
Right.
so I got to see the crossover. They did a crossover episode this last season that's airing right now. And I think I might have heard of Sudeikis, but like I didn't know much about him because, like you said, this was either he was still on SNL or just coming out of it. But I don't think he had done anything major by this point. Um, and I'm not a huge SNL fan. Like I like some of the characters, like some of the skits. I watched a bunch of stuff from the SNL 50 because
Yeah.
dedications to the older stuff and stuff I do remember, but it's not something I really would get around to watching. Although I find myself watching Weekend Update every week now online just because it's hilarious. Um, so say all that to say, I see this. I see the movie comes out. It looks like an interesting premise. It's definitely Kevin Spacey plays probably something that might be more true to Kevin Spacey than we ever really knew, right? Um,
Mhm.
it is that you're definitely not. It's Jennifer Aniston, but it's not Rachel from Friends. Um,
Yeah.
we will touch on that in a moment. I'm sure we will. It seemed like an interesting premise. I never really got around to going to see it, and then never like picked it up in the rental market, and then just honestly kind of forgot about it. Once again, this seems like it would have been a great movie of like a Comedy Central, FX, TN,
Yeah, yeah.
or something like that. Had streaming not taken off, this would have been one of those movies that would have been probably pretty popular on a service like that. That at some point you might be flipping through and find. And I probably would have seen bits and pieces of it here and there, and eventually before I eventually saw it, but just never got around to it.
Yeah, I also just looked it up. Sudeikis was on SNL from like '03 to 13.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, so
pretty.
this was
That's a good
yeah, so
run.
he was on there for another 2 years after this. Um this is kind of like when you talk about the loss of um like the when you talk about the loss of like even finding stuff on cable for streaming, this is also the loss of like these type of movies in theaters as a whole.
Those
These are
cheap to mid
movies.
range comedies that
Yeah, they're
don't
now
take
just
a.
straight to streaming or and they either make a wave or they don't, like this like we were living in a time where a lot of the movies I went to before now a lot of the movies I go to are for the big franchises because that's a lot of what comes out. But I used to go see like The Hangover, Horrible Bosses, like I said, Superbad, Pineapple Express. Like I would go see
Yeah.
comedies in theaters as well, and those are Game Night, which is another Jason Bateman movie. Those were movies that were released in theaters up until about streaming or even up until COVID at times, and now those movies have been kind of just you know brushed aside.
For me, I think it would prime example of that would probably be, I think it's Date Night with Tina Fey and Steve Carell.
Yes, that was one I saw in theaters. I love Date Night.
I saw that in theaters too. But yeah, that mid range, that like 10 to 20, $30 million comedy, something like that. Where now it seems to be everything's either made really cheap, that like $5 to $10 million range, so they can try and maximize profits off it, and maybe like an independent movie or something, or it's the massive 100 million, 75 $100 million range budgeted movie where they're expecting it to be like the next major tentpole, next major franchise or something.
And that was
Those,
like a Date Night 2010, so it's around the same era,
yeah,
of films here. But yeah, that was another good one. I love that movie.
but that also seems to be another thing with this is you won't. Back then, you would get sitcom stars, or
Or
whatever
SNL people that would be able to
during the
make it
off season
great.
would
Yeah,
make a movie or two, and then obviously Jennifer Aniston can't really stop production on Friends, or like, unless she's pregnant, which happens, not her, but which happens with other actresses, right?
right.
Like not appear for like 2 months during a show, right? But they can go off and they can make a movie from the time production ends until production on the next season starts. Same thing with SNL. Your uh, what's his name? I can't think of the name.
Sudeikis.
Sudeikis from SNL, right? He can he can make a movie in off season for SNL. Steve Carell can make something from The Office in the off season, right?
Hmm.
And it doesn't really
Yep.
mess up production of the show. He still he still gets he's still getting his paycheck and everything from the show, and it also will attract that group of fans of theirs to that movie, hopefully, right? So
And vice
people,
versa. If you like them in the movie and you find out they have a show.
yeah, you might be like, oh, let me check out this. Have you ever heard of this show called Friends? I don't know. It's got this Jennifer Aniston. Let me check that
Never heard of it.
out. That reminds me of what was it? King of Queens. There's this new pizza place called Domino's. You mean
Yeah.
Domino's? Yeah. But so yeah, you kind of miss out on stuff like that but now, because seasons aren't necessarily from September to May, right? Filming, with all the streaming stuff, seasons start whenever they want them to start. They end
Yep.
whenever they want them to end. Can be 20 episodes, it can be 7. Uh, but then you might not get another season for another 3 years. So, how that say streaming is great, but it's probably ruining entertainment as we know.
Yep. No, I agree with all of those points. Really, it's really shaken up the TV landscape, the film landscape. It's crazy. I mean, it is kind of like, I guess you would say, more affordable in the sense of, though it's getting expensive. But like if you do it right, like it's cheaper than, like, I would say, going to Hollywood Video or Blockbuster and renting as many movies as you would watch on like streaming or whatever. But it's a lot of these streaming companies are starting to really jack up the prices as well. So
I don't know. Those rental
um,
things towards the end of their days had like an unlimited option where you
did
could
they?
rent. I know whatever we had Blockbuster. One of my ex-wives and I had Blockbuster, and then I think there was a Hollywood Video version too, where you could you could rent as many movies as you wanted in like a month for like 20, 30 bucks or whatever it was. So if you were good for like going picking up a movie and then dropping it off like the next day or something like that, it wasn't bad. You it was a good option for that. But you had to be pretty vigilant about, can't keep it more than a couple of days because
Yeah.
there was a break even point of like, I think maybe 10 to 15 movies or so, and if you didn't maximize that, then yeah, it wasn't worth it.
Redbox was good for like at near the end there too, just $1, for a
Dollar a night or
day.
whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah. I would do
One,
that on when I was worked at Disney sometimes. I would rent a DVD, watch it on my laptop, if it was something that came out like how did I did that for like some of the Hobbit films and like Iron Man 3 cuz that came out right before I moved to Disney and then I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters and it came out on Redbox and I was like I'm renting this and watched it in a day, took it back the next day on my way to work, like that was working for a bit and they're still around but they're also bankrupt, so who knows how that's going, but
well, so I was gonna bring that up, and I saw something about this. The boxes are still around, but there's nothing in them.
oh, is it true that they've
Or,
completely emptied them out?
or it's this whole weird thing about who owns them, so people like they can't really pick them up. Because there's a 7-Eleven I go to, and there's still a big red box thing. Like it's one of them has still has a big red box thing out there, but it's I don't even know if it's plugged in. It's there, but
Right.
it's just kind of like a relic of a time. Where did you ever first see a red box? Mine they used to be in McDonald's when they first came out.
McDonald's was the first place they hooked up with, and then after that, I started seeing them at like ShopRite, my grocery stores around here.
Yeah,
That was pretty much it, and like maybe a CVS at one point. I think they were outside of CVS as well. So like or Walgreens or something. So I would see them at like because the one that I would go to in Florida was I think next to the Walgreens. So I Uh, so I would say Walgreens, McDonald's, and grocery stores were like the places I saw them the most.
and they also sometimes they were in some sketchy areas too. You had to be,
You get the disc and it's all scratched. Like that's the bad thing too. There's bad quality control on some of those, but most of the time it worked for me. So um, that was always good. All right, let's get into the movie. Before we kind of get into it, just I wanted to highlight some stuff. The screenplay was written by Michael Markowitz at first, and it was bought by New Line Cinema in 2005, and then it spent like 6 years of you know gestating, I guess, until it was ready to go. In 2010, Goldstein and Daley rewrote the script, and the film finally went into production. And I wanted to point this out because I seen their names, John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein, and I'm like, I know these names, and I look it up while I'm watching the movie and they actually directed Game Night, which stars Jason Bateman, and came out in 2018 with Rachel McAdams. So that was something, and then he also just directed that Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out, the comedy. I did not watch that yet, but my friend Ron said it's really good and it's got good reviews and such. So I might give that a try now, knowing that they made Horrible Bosses and Game Night. But if you want to feel bad about yourself, like I did watching this movie, click John Francis Daly's Wikipedia because this guy's 39 years old today, which means when this movie came out 14 years ago, he was what, 25? Uh Writing a hit movie. He was also the star of Freaks and Geeks, the NBC cult classic. And he was also on Bones, the TV show on Fox, as a criminal profiler, Dr. Lance Sweets over there, and he was on there for like its whole run.
Sweets made this movie.
Yes, and he's in the movie too. He is the one that talks to Bateman when Bateman's saying that like, oh, I get up, he gets mad at me for being a minute late, and he's 50 minutes late to this meeting or whatever.
Okay,
That's who he's
yeah.
talking to. And he also wrote part of Spider-Man: Homecoming. He also wrote the 2015 Vacation movie uh, and directed that movie with Ed Helms. Yeah, so I mean, like he's done a lot, and he's only 39 now. I'm 33, and I look at that and I'm like, this guy was only 6 years older than me writing this movie. It made me feel pretty bad about myself, but we're all on different paths. But yeah, that is. He's also in a band or something too. I mean, like this guy, I'm envious to say the least. Um, yeah. So let's dive into the movie. We have three friends: Nick Hendricks, Dale Arbus, and Kurt Buckman, who are friends that live in Riverside, California, and two of them hate their boss. Dale hates his boss, Julia, who's played by Jennifer Aniston, and is constantly sexual harassing him. We have uh, Nick Hendricks, who's played by Jason Bateman, who hates his boss, played by Kevin Spacey. His name is Harkin, and he is in line for promotion, and until Harkin decides he is going to take the role himself and take 85% of the salary that he is absorbing from the position as well. And he pretty much hinted to Nick the whole time that he was getting it just to make him work harder. But we have Kurt, played by Sudeikis, who loves his boss, who's played by Donald Sutherland. And until Donald Sutherland dies driving out of work one day without being able to write down, I guess, that he would have wanted Kurt to take over the job. So instead, his son Bobby, played by Colin Farrell, who is a cokehead karate fiend, ends up uh, taking over the family business. What were your thoughts about these three bosses? And did you ever have a boss like this that, like, especially like Kevin Spacey, that was so evil, laughing in his face about Gam Gam and making him work late on weekends and stuff, and then not giving him the promotion?
Okay, let's touch on one of these last ones here. It would be a struggle if somebody just came up to me and be like, "You made me miss Gam Gam." Like, okay, look, I understand everyone has different names that they call their paternal objects in their family, their mother, father, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all that other stuff, right? Some of it's cultural, some of it's not. I still don't understand stuff like peepaw and meemaw, whatever. That's what you, if you know, that's what you call them. So be it. You're a goddamn adult. Hey man, you made me miss my grandmother dying. You don't need to bust out. Look, I'll be honest with you. I might not have laughed in his face, but I might have had to like bite my tongue and then literally bite the inside of my cheeks to not laugh when he's like, "You made me miss Game Game." What the hell are you talking about? You're an adult. Let's act like an adult. Okay. Um, I have had bosses. I think we've all had bosses that we've hated, not liked, that we've had to work for. Um, some more than others. I've had some bosses I despised. Um, nothing, nothing along the lines of these people
um, I would say probably the one thing that uh, one of the things that doesn't age as well with this movie is the, though I do think they handle it better than like a movie from like the 90s or 80s would have, is the Julia stuff.
though.
Sexually harassing.
Let's talk about Julie. Let's talk about Julie. Like I said, this is not Rachel from Friends. Um,
No, very different.
I kind of wonder if Jennifer Aniston took this just because it was something so different from anything she had played previously.
I could see that.
Um, Charlie Day is engaged at this time, right?
Hmm.
Sure, he's in a very loving relationship. I gotta be honest. I always thought Jennifer Aniston was cute before. Like, she's an attractive woman, but she was cute. Okay, cool, whatever. You know, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who thought much more highly of her than that. Um, she was a smoke show in this. Jesus Christ. Uh, okay. Not sure about your feelings of Jennifer Aniston. How would you feel if Jennifer Aniston looking like this is doing that to you?
I mean, look, Jennifer Aniston is a very attractive lady. I had a crush on her when I was growing up because I was watching Friends. So this is a,
Oh,
you know,
it's a little deeper for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I don't like Julia in this movie in the sense of like, she like I like her character in the sense of it's funny, but like I would be like Dale, I think, in this, and it would be probably driving me nuts. Especially like now, look, if he wasn't engaged, this might go a little differently, right? Like if he wasn't in a relationship and maybe he would actually be down, right? But like she continues to press and press and press, and I can't stand when people push me too much.
It would take all the strength I had to not take advantage of those job benefits there. Not gonna lie. Um, let's talk about Dale for a second. So stuff like that actually happens, right? Not the sexual harassment part. The part of you end up being a registered sex offender for something
Yes.
really small. I read a story. This was probably 2017, 2015, somewhere in that range, about a kid who was trying to get it taken off his record because the day he graduated high school, he was 18, right? Just graduates high school. They're at a party or something. He's in a car. He moons a bus. The bus happens to be full of school kids on their way back from a field trip. He ends up a registered sex offender because he mooned a bus. And that, especially in a lot of places, that kills any job opportunities you may have. It kills a lot. Now, I'm old enough to remember when To Catch a Predator first aired, right?
Yep.
So I've been a fan of that for a long time. Chris Hansen has a podcast that I listen to weekly. Talks about the Predator. It's literally called Predators I've Caught, right? And he goes over all the stories and everything from all the different predators he's caught over the years. Um, I respect the work he does, and he doesn't deal with anything like this, but like I think we do need some more common sense as far as like what were they doing? So situation like Dale's drunken night or whatever. Let's say it's the middle of the
Nobody's
night.
actually there. Yeah.
Nobody's on the playground. He's at a playground because he's he's drunk and stupid and is urinating. Okay. Look, does he need to be punished? Maybe a fine, maybe a day, a night or two in jail. Sure. I'd be okay for like sure. Do we need to have him as a registered sex offender for the rest of his life? I think we might need some more common sense when it comes to that. Like, is this really what the laws were made for? Right? Probably not.
Right. And I
But
I think they did a good job with this because they had to give him some reason why he can't just quit, right? Like cuz that's kind
yeah,
of like if he would just quit, but like when they mention it, it's like, "Oh yeah, you can't quit because it'd be hard for you to find another job because of this."
especially most dentists that will take children patients. He probably can't be
Right.
around kids. Um. So yeah, that I think that was very well layered in there about like you said how why he can't quit. Um, and I think also one of the problems with uh, let's say you're a district attorney or a judge or someone who's elected and you want to get the laws changed. Um, now you're coming out against registration for sex offenders. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where does that go? Like, how do you? It's never good. People aren't going to have the nuance to look into what's actually being said and what you're trying to get at. But it's
Especially if
gonna
you know that nowadays.
the commercials and the flyers that I'm gonna have to deliver during the election cycle are gonna have
Yep.
you wanting to have people not register as sex offenders, and your election is gonna go by the wayside. So kind of sucks. But yeah, that's one of those things, man. Stuff like this happens, and it's like when you hear about it, you're like, "No, that can't happen. There's no way." And then when you read more into it, you're like, "Jesus Christ! Like, is this really what we're doing here?" Like,
Right. Yeah, and that's unfortunate for Dale, right? But and I really did like the way they wove that in though, because it'll come up a few times where like then when they're caught by the cops and they're like, and you're hanging out with this freaky motherfucker or
Yeah,
whatever, it's like, all right, see, so it like builds into like more reasons why they're suspicious, and like
and and,
who you're
and
hanging around.
let's be realistic. If we hear somehow that somebody we're in a room with or whatever is a registered sex offender, right? Most of us would probably stop listening right there. Like we don't want to hear anymore. We probably want him gone or we're gonna leave. We're not gonna want to listen to like, oh well, it was a playground, there was nobody there. Like, you
Right,
know what I'm saying? It's no like pretty much we tune out and we're gonna tune out everything after we find out Joe is a registered sex offender. Well, I want nothing to do with Joe from this point forward.
right.
So that's story time with Casey. So I made a mistake one day of looking to see if there were any registered sex offenders on my mail route.
Mm.
Probably shouldn't have done that because there was several, um, including one guy who lives in a really weird spot. Probably because very hard to find places when you're registered sex offender. Okay, cool.
Right, right.
Well, uh, so I can't really, honestly, I can't really find this place because he lives in like this industrial park, and I guess there's one random trailer somewhere in the park, in this industrial park. There's a random trailer where he lives. Don't know where it is. Not gonna take the time to find it. Honestly, don't want to find it because I found out he's a registered sex offender, right? And including like a couple of days after I somehow looked it up, people had put a bunch of stuff in his mailbox of like, "Go away, pedo. We don't want you in our neighborhood." Blah blah blah.
Dang.
So like, I would have found out one way or the other, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
um, so if he gets a package that doesn't fit in his mailbox, right? I'm not taking it to his house. I leave him one of those little pink slips, put it in his mailbox. Yeah, here you go. Go pick a package up. You have a good day. Well, one day I'm getting gas in the same neighborhood, and he sees the mail truck pull up while he's getting gas. Comes over and says, "Hey, do you deliver to this address?" As soon as he says the address, I know who it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got a package. Well, all right, I gotta stop you right there. You got the slip. You got to go pick it up. Now, he's also like Judge Reinhold's character from Seinfeld. He's a close talker. He's getting like really close to me, like really uncomfortably close. Now, could be that he's just the kind of person who gets uncomfortably close, right? Or after what I know about him, he might be in my mind getting more uncomfortably close to me because of what I know than what he actually is. I don't know. But there was a couple times I literally had to take a step back before I was like, look, man, don't know where your place is on the lot, somewhere back there. Oh, I'll give you directions. Nope, nope, we're not doing that. I don't know where it is. You can take it up with my boss, but you got to go pick up your package from the post office. Now, I was also very prepared to tell my boss if he ever would have asked why. Hey, he says you won't deliver to his place. Yeah, I won't deliver to his place. Google his name. You will find out why I don't feel comfortable around that guy. But yeah, once I met the dude, the vibes I got off of him were way off. Now, that could have been just because he gave out creepy dude vibes, or it could have been I thought he was much creepier because of what I knew. Don't know, not sure, but the vibes just once I physically was in the same presence of him was like, yep, you're not getting, nope, don't know where it is, not trying to find your weird trailer, and I don't feel comfortable going to wherever your weird trailer is by myself. So, you sir have a good day.
So that was Dale,
Yeah,
we were just talking about there. Then we have Nick. I guess we can talk a little bit about um, Nick. What I was going to say about not aging as appropriately with Dr. Julia and stuff. I guess is uh, I do think they handle it better, like I said, than some other movies would have, because it's like both of the other guys, Nick and Kurt, just totally do not take what Dale is saying as
Serious.
serious. Yeah,
Let's be realistic, especially during this time. Was it 2011?
yeah,
If somebody's sitting there saying what Dale's saying, and then she looks like Jennifer Aniston, very few people in 2011 are going to have sympathy for Dale.
hmm
Not going to lie, I probably would have very little. Back then, I probably would have had very little to no sympathy for Dale. Like, I'll be telling you, I'm not going to be virtuous and be like, oh man, nah, man, you should, that's horrible. I probably would be just like those two, like, really, dude, really, this is that
right,
bad. So once again, different time. Usually it's me on the other end of like, hey, this was made at a different time and it doesn't age well, but this was just how things were back then. And God, that was only like 15 years ago.
yeah.
We're
I would
talking
say
about
like nowadays, uh, people would kind of take it probably a little bit more seriously, but the or it maybe wouldn't be as many jokes at Dale's expense for it. But I think then the rest of the way that they handle this is pretty forward, actually. Like, this actually does upset Dale. He does not like that this is happening, right? Like, I could have seen, like, in the 80s, just one of them being like, Dale himself being like, this is great. I got my
yeah,
boss hitting on me and I got my fiance type thing. But, like,
especially later when we find out through the photos that she actually legitimately took advantage of him
yes.
while he was knocked out.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's actually the trigger of okay, so they well, that's the thing, right? They're all sitting at this where it was filmed is at TGI Fridays. So they're at like a TGI Fridays here and they're all complaining about their bosses, especially once Bobby took over. And Kurt, I think, mentions offhandedly, like, wouldn't it be just easier if they were not around, right? And Nick and Dale are kind of like, oh, no, we can't really do that. Well, hypothetically, right? Would you do it? And then the next day is right when Dale finds out the photos that Jennifer Aniston's Julia has taken of him when he first started the job and has just been sitting on these and pretty much has that ultimatum of, I will show these to your fiance
Beyonce.
if you don't
Yeah.
have sex with me, pretty much. And he just comes in and he's like, let's do it. Let's kill the bitch, right? He's
And
ready.
let's be realistic. Even if you try to get ahead of that with your fiance,
It's
you
tough.
can you can tell him that it's gonna be pretty hard to like, especially when the fiance knows her as like this nice person, who's giving her like free dental work and everything, and
Yeah.
everything that she has seen, in front of the curtain is one thing, but she hasn't seen everything goes on behind the curtain in this dental office, right? So, yeah, even if you try and get ahead of it and decide to like, okay, I need to let you know this is going on, it's not going to look good for you because now it just seems like, yeah, I, I'm getting, I was sleeping with my boss, and now that she's threatening to tell you, I'm trying to get ahead of it, right?
Right, right. Yeah, so he's kind of stuck in this impossible position here, which makes him think, all right, now it's the time to actually do it. But while they're eating here as well, they run into an old friend from, I guess, college or high school or something. I forget what they say. But, he just lost his job or something, and he's going through some tough times, and he's offering them hand jobs in the bathroom for like
Yeah, that,
40 bucks a pop.
that took a left hand turn I did not see coming. Like we were
They're
just
all giving him
traveling down the
money
road,
to help him, and then he's like, "Oh, I need more than that. Like, what about hand jobs for $40 each?" And
and
I
then the
just love the
bartender's like,
bartender.
yeah, he's like,
Yeah,
hey, didn't I tell you about this?
no more hand jobs. Get out of here. So they decide, all right, now's the time we're gonna kill our bosses because Bobby Pellet, who took over for Donald Sutherland's Jack, um, is a monster. He calls Kurt in to fire Marge, who's pregnant, so we think. Then there was who he called Professor Xavier because he was rolling
In a
around in a
wheelchair. Yeah.
wheelchair.
So when I watched this, I read that Farrell had a lot. He was involved with putting together the look for his character,
Mm. Makes
and
sense.
yes, so that was total sleazeball right there, picture perfect sleazeball.
Yeah, and they were also encouraged to improvise a lot too. So I'm sure this might be one of it with the rolling around in his special chair or whatever. He's handicapped, Bobby. And he says, well, either one of them goes or all three of you go. Right? So uh puts Kurt in a bad position here. Um so they decide they're gonna kill the bosses. So they go and decide to find a hitman, and we get the scene at the hotel where Charlie Day's character puts out a request on Craigslist, man seeking man here,
Oh, I saw this one coming from a mile away.
wet work and all that. It's somebody who's going to give golden showers to the men. I just love when
As
they
soon as he
like,
started putting the tarp down, I was like, "Oh,
oh
this
yeah,
is
for the
getting
mess.
weird." Yeah, like, "Oh, this is not what they are expecting."
When I love when they like are able to get away from this here, and then he's just like, can I use your bathroom? I stored up a lot of pee. And it's like, yeah, it makes sense. You thought this was going to go a certain
You
way.
thought you thought you were coming here for something different, so yeah, you prepped for it. I
Yeah, so
mean,
you're probably holding it back right now,
look,
so yeah, go
let's
ahead.
be realistic. It's not my thing. If that's somebody's thing, hey, as long as it's two consenting adults, so be it. Who am I to kink shame, right?
Yeah,
But
not yucking anybody's yum.
what would be worse? This situation where you were trying to hire for one thing entirely and it was completely not what you were expecting, or if you did hire him for that and instead he doesn't show up ready to go, and now he's got to sit there for like 3 hours and drink a bunch of
Drinking
water
water.
so he can be ready to go.
Yeah. Uh, I would think the second one would be worse because I feel like I would like if you did hire him for that, you just want to get the job done. You don't want to be sitting around waiting hours for him to store up his fluids.
I
Uh,
don't know.
because then it can
Uh,
get more awkward too, where you're like, and then you're second guessing yourself if you really want to go through this.
I don't know. Well, unless it's your first time, right?
Right.
Not really sure you're going to second guess yourself. Like, pretty sure. Okay, this is not the best example. Chappelle did a skit a while back about when the whole R. Kelly thing happened a while ago.
Mm.
And one of the things he brought up was like, I think the girl was 15. Once again, not the greatest example, right? Because she's still a minor. But his thing was like, do you really need time to sit there and think about, like, do you like this or not? Like, either you do or you don't. Or if you're not sure, it's not going to take long after it happens right off the bat for you to for you to know whether or not you like something, right? So, like I said, unless this is your first time doing this, right? Pretty sure, like, if this is your first time and you're experimenting, okay, cool. You might need some time to figure that out. This isn't your first time. This isn't your first rodeo with that, right? And you hired someone for that. I don't think there's going to be second guessing. I think it's pretty much like, hey, I hired you for a job. Like, this is the job I need you to do. Not, I don't think you're going to be in a situation of like, do I really want to go through with this? If anything, it might be like, hey, look, I got to be someplace at like 8 o'clock. I need to get this done because I got other stuff to do.
Right. Yeah. You should be prepared for the job if you're coming in. I feel. Uh, so they go to the seediest bar that they can find, and
Their OnStar or whatever it is that
yes,
it's called.
OnStar equivalent. Uh, takes them to like a bar that's in a area that has the most carjackings or something, right? And they're like, oh yeah, that'll fit. So they go there and they decide. uh, to hire Motherfucker Jones, who's an ex-con, to be their murder consultant. And he is played by Jamie Foxx. And this story of how he got his name, you think is going one way. Creeping into his mom's bedroom,
Wild
and
turns.
then
Wild turns.
reaching his hand into her purse and really fucking her over. And they're like, "Oh, thank God." What'd you make of Jamie Foxx here as Motherfucker Jones? It turns out his biggest crime he committed was actually filming uh, illegally films and releasing them into the black market.
That reminds me of another Seinfeld episode.
Yes,
Um,
when Kramer's going to film.
and doesn't he end up getting Jerry to end up doing it, or George? Uh, so interesting character. Jamie Foxx played this part pretty well. Once again, another sleazeball, although not as sleazy as you really think. His only crime is I wouldn't say a victimless crime, but
Served
so
10
so
years for it, right? He said a dime.
in all fairness, with what we know about him later, that dime might have been like 10 days. Because the
True.
thing he only said a dime, right? And that honestly, that dime might have been like 10 days or 10 months or something.
Right, right.
Now that I think about it, like, yeah, I don't think he served 10 years for that. But so let me ask you this: does Charlie Day kind of play the same character in everything he does, or like a version
Um,
of the same character almost?
I would say this is very different from Charlie and It's Always Sunny. It's just it's the same voice. He's got that wildly high, you know, voice. But this character, like if you watch It's Always Sunny, Charlie is an absolute moron. And can barely write full sentences. So
Well,
like it's very different.
spoiler alert: they taught him how to read in Abbott Elementary in the crossover episode.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, right.
So
He can
apparently,
barely read. He can barely
apparently
write.
in the apparently they got at some point they got sent to community service. Most of the people, most of the main cast. So that's how they ended up at Abbott Elementary. They ended up being like helpers for the day
That makes sense.
for community service. Which, yeah, like once again, never seen It's Always Sunny, but when I uh, on the subreddit for Abbott Elementary, like because a bunch of people, it's not the same crowd that watches a lot of
Yes.
It's Always Sunny in Abbott Elementary, right? There's gonna be some crossover, yes, but those two shows are not meant for the same kind of person, right? Not saying one's bad or one's better than the other, although one does have a couple Emmys. I'm not sure about it. It's Always Sunny. I know Abbott Elementary has a few Emmys. Um, so someone on the subreddit explained, like, okay, like who they were, and it was like why they would be there, and it was like, yeah, they probably got sent to community service, and I guess apparently when this season of It's Always Sunny comes out, they're gonna tell the same story from their point of view, because this one was done
Mm.
through the Abbott Elementary point of view, because they have like a documentary film crew with them in the school and so on and so forth. Which, another side note, why are all these shows having documentary crews everywhere? Like, we gotta stop that. Okay.
There is a lot of documentaries out there though.
The Office and Parks and Rec was cool. I'll even give it to Modern Family, but after that, like, we gotta find something else. Um, but so apparently, because they're made for two different demographics totally. Like, one is on FX, is much more adult oriented, and It's Always
Yeah.
Sunny. Um, Abbott Elementary is ABC, more family friendly, right? Made for a different kind of person. So when they decided to do the crossover, they decided to do it from two different points of view to show one on each network, right?
Hmm.
So we got the cleaner version here a couple months ago or whatever. The other version will air, I guess, this fall whenever the new season comes out. So I've never seen episode, but I may watch that episode just so I can see what things look like from their point of view or what was going on with them in their world as they're doing this community service.
Well, maybe I'll pick some episodes for you on this show we can do because
It's on my list. It's been on there for a while because I've heard it's good. But the problem now is what, like 18 seasons or something like that.
yeah, yeah, they're
It's
short though. Like like at the most I think they have is maybe there might be one season that's close to 20, but like especially nowadays, it's mostly like 6 to 8 episodes a season because all of them are so busy with other things.
and
Because
granted, it's
Caitlin
on.
Olsen is now on
Yeah,
that
she got her own
ABC
show
show.
now. And granted,
Yeah,
it's on FX, so it wasn't necessarily a normal network, I guess is
yeah,
the best way to
yeah.
say. So they were kind of like USA in that aspect where they were doing their own things, where they were them in USA first decided to start instead of doing seasons, from September to May, like they might start a season in January, they might start a season in April, they might have a
Right.
show that starts a season in like June when everything else is on hiatus. So like you could, watch, like they did that with Psych a lot on USA where they decided, hey, we're coming back in like February.
They
Okay,
were usually
cool.
Psych was usually a summer show, and then the second half of it would be a winter show. While the networks are usually off during those times, that's what
Yeah,
USA would do. They would have like summer programming, and then like January, February, March programming because a lot of those shows on other networks were off. So they're thinking people will find our show instead.
yeah. And then I
Um,
know during that writer strike in '08, they, because it's owned by NBC,
they
they
put it on
tried moving
NBC. Yeah.
they tried to put Psych on NBC, which was great for me, but I don't know how well it worked out for them. And I think it worked out a little bit just because it was like a new show, or not a new show, but like they had new episodes of a show, so they still had some content to put on NBC. But I don't know if it gained any new fans because those don't necessarily seem to be the same kind of fans.
Yeah, it was just a way to try to, like they did it with the last writer strike here. ABC was putting on episodes of like The Mandalorian and stuff on ABC because they're like, well, maybe that'll
Really,
get people to go to yeah, they're like maybe that'll get people to go to Disney Plus. So
I did I
trying
did
to
not know that.
yeah. Yeah, so they've done that a few times for certain shows like that, try to get people over there. Um then we have so they meet motherfucker they uh they come up with an idea to each kill each other's boss so that way there's no ties back to the other person.
Strangers on a
Not sure
train.
that yes, but I would say I think while I think it might be a good idea initially, all they'd have to do is find out that this guy is friends and seen hanging out with you, and they'd probably be able to put that together. The cops, um, these three are friends from like school, so like when it turns out that if they were ever to put any sort of thing together and they find out, let's say Dale killed Harkin, they'd be like, oh, well, Harkin is his friend's boss. Maybe he did that on purpose, right? Like, but it's a good idea here at first
In
here
theory,
and in theory, and they decide to do some like recon, right? And they sit outside of Bobby's house and they realize he's not home. They've been sitting out there for hours and they realize he's not home and they decide to go in and uh, see if they can get any information. Kurt makes the bad decision to put Bobby's toothbrush and razor shade down his pants, which is going to, of course, leave some DNA. Meanwhile, they're all
okay.
trying to do the
Let's.
sleeve.
I understand their thinking behind that, but look, I don't know exactly what crime scene techs will check and test in
Mm-hmm.
a crime scene like that later on when he is killed. I don't know if they're gonna check his toothbrush for DNA. I think he might have been safe. I understand why they did it for story purposes,
Right, right.
right? But I think it might have been safe with that one. Like,
Maybe. Yeah, I guess it depends on how, because like the crime scene takes place outside of his front door, right? So maybe they wouldn't go
or just not
Only
even
to
that.
the bathroom.
Even if they're gonna like, even if they're gonna go in the house to see like if there's disturbance, like whatever's going on, right? Like once
True.
again, I'm not sure exactly what a CSI or crime tech person will do, but let's be realistic. You see a toothbrush in there, right? Are you going to check the toothbrush for other DNA? Maybe, maybe not. Like, are maybe this is the reason why a lot of these sexual assault cases DNAs aren't being tested because we're wasting time and money on stuff like this, like testing random toothbrushes that probably have nothing to do with the crime. But
Right.
once again, I also understand why they did it because it gave him a reason to freak out later when he's like, "Oh no, I put his toothbrush up my butt, and now they have my DNA."
Yeah. We also have them. They're worried about leaving fingerprints and stuff. So two of them have long sleeves on and just use their sleeve gloves. I think they call them, right. And Jason Bateman doesn't have any sleeves on. He's got the short sleeve shirt on. But Charlie Day's character tries to pick up the cocaine that's sitting here. He's like, "Have you ever seen this much?" And he drops it, and of course it spills everywhere. So then they're trying to clean that up. They're trying to vacuum it up, and then, well, Dale is like high on coke at this because it went up. A
Oh, not
lot of
just
the
Dale,
particles went up there.
Dale, and what's his name?
Nick, yeah, Nick is also a little high on it. But Dale is really feeling the effects of it. I feel like throughout.
Can we talk
Um,
about Jason Bateman for a second?
yeah,
He's had a very interesting career. Um,
Child Star,
what
Fall
was
from
he in
Grace.
as a kid? I remember him. I remember seeing him as a kid.
Uh, Hogan's Family, which has been it was a show that was renamed a couple times. What is I think it was called like Valerie Harper or something at one time. What was that?
I remember his sister more because his sister was in what was it? Family Ties.
Yeah, I believe so. The Hogan Family. Okay. Originally titled Valerie, later titled Valerie's Family, the Hogans, and also known as the Hogan Family.
So I remember him as a kid star, right? Um,
6 season show.
I don't remember anything else from him until Arrested Development came
Yes,
out.
that was his kind of like his
Comeback.
yeah, he had a fall from grace for a bit due to child star syndrome, where they end up usually falling into either alcohol or drugs for a bit.
Okay, see that I
Then he
didn't
came
know.
back out of it. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Then he came back out of it and got uh,
I'm glad he's
Arrested
better.
Development.
Glad he's better. Because I always wonder. I probably could have Googled. I probably could have done the same thing you did, just Google it, but I never did. Um, I like you said. I remember him from the '80s as a kid because he's probably around the same age, maybe a little older than I am. Excuse me, I'm 46, so maybe 10 years older than I am. Then he just disappears. Then next thing I know, he's playing Michael Bluth, right? And then then from there, like it picks off, and now he's doing a whole bunch of other stuff. But he's had a very interesting career in that aspect because you don't see a lot of child stars like that get a second or third chance to really and take advantage of the chances in LA.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes if things don't work out or things go bad, maybe they get themselves clean or better, and then they kind of move on. They get away from Hollywood and they try and go do something else, right? Totally understand.
Yeah.
You have the complete other end of the spectrum where it's just tragedy, right? And bad things happen. And we're talking about remembrances and making laws and things about stuff like that. But you don't see him. I think him, Drew Barrymore. There's a few people like that, but you don't see a ton of it where they get other opportunities, they get themselves clean, and they stay in that Hollywood machine where they still end up doing great things after them.
Yeah, because I mean, like his renaissance was Arrested Development, and then he started getting roles in The Breakup, Juno, which also starred Michael Cera, and that was another movie I went to see in theaters because of Michael Cera and Jason Bateman starring in it. Hancock, and then he took starring roles with The Switch, which was a Jennifer Aniston, Jason Bateman movie. The Change Up, which was just a month after this movie released, which is where he switches bodies with Ryan Reynolds. Horrible Bosses, Identity Thief. This
Is
is
that
where
the
I leave
one?
you. Office Christmas Party.
Is that the one with Melissa McCarthy, Identity Thief?
Yes, yep. Directed
I
by the same guy who directed this movie. So
because I think the only reason I really know that one is from the meme.
yeah, I haven't seen this movie. I'm not a big Melissa McCarthy fan, so I did not watch
I just know
this.
there's a meme from it of like somebody will say or do something, and then there's Jason Bateman with "the fuck you are."
Oh, is that where it's from?
Yeah, because I guess
And then he was
I guess they
good.
went to like an Applebee's or something, and she tried to order a bunch of food or try to get some stuff, and that's where it came from. But
But now he's been in like a whole bunch of, he was in Ozark, which was a different type of role for him. He was just in the Netflix movie Carry On, which was more like an action thriller. So, yeah, he's starting to really
branch out
expand
a
his
little bit.
horizons a bit more too. Yeah, but yeah. So they go through. Then they go to Harkins, and while they leave Dale in the car because
He's high on
he's a
coke.
little still strung out here, but they go in there, and Harkin ends up walking by while Dale throws out like some peanuts or peanut butter residue, and Harkin's allergic and starts into shock, which causes Dale to find his EpiPen and save his life. Uh, Ironic because this is the guy they're trying to kill,
Yeah,
so he saves his life.
and it would have been
Meanwhile, the guys are looking out the window thinking that he's like already killing
stabbing
him
him. It would
because
have
he's
been picture
dying.
perfect too of like, hey, he had anaphylactic, he went into anaphylactic shock,
Yeah,
had allergic reaction to peanuts, but obviously he doesn't know that. He doesn't know that's the guy he's meant to kill, you know. And also, quick side note: can you imagine if you're what's his name's boss? You come back to your place, and I think it's fairly obvious. There's no way they could have cleaned up all the cocaine, right? And then they dust buster it up, and they're emptying the dust. But they didn't empty the dust buster in the first place, so they you're
it's
on
all
the
messed up,
yeah. So
filled
now
with
it's
other
it's
stuff.
cocaine
It's
and
like
dust
gray.
and fuzz. I mean, can you imagine how livid he would be?
Yeah. Well,
How much
that
money
was their.
that's down the drain?
It makes them come up with their plan though of, oh, we'll give him like bad coke, and we'll give Harkin the peanuts. Um, but we get to see Julie Bowen in this. She is Harkin's wife. She stars
Who
in
manages to
Modern
sleep
Family.
around with everybody?
Yes, and
And she will be reprising her role in the next Adam Sandler movie, Happy Gilmore, the Happy Gilmore sequel coming out.
right. I've never seen Abby Gilmore.
Oh, okay. We're gonna rectify that here soon.
But
Um,
I do love Julie Bowen. She's also from Baltimore, so I'm
she,
a big fan.
I'll tell you this: she does face wise, she looks the same.
Yeah,
Her hair is completely different in Happy Gilmore. So if you didn't know it was Julie Bowen, you might look at her and not be able to recognize
yeah, interesting. Um, but yeah, Julie Bowen at this time was starring in Modern Family, so she appears in this movie as
her.
Rhonda, Harkin's wife.
I think I want to see her get more roles. I mean, I don't know if she's just really picky about. Sorry, I don't know if she's picky about the roles she takes after Modern Family because I haven't seen her in much. Or maybe
Yeah,
she's doing family stuff or has some other things she's involved with. But I would like to see her on my screen more. Um, she was really good as Claire in Modern Family. She seems like a really good, really funny person. Um, so like I said, I don't know if it's her choice, if one reason or another, but I'd like to see more Julie Bowen out
yeah. Let's see. She movie wise has not been in a lot. She took a break in like She did some like voice work in 2013, 2014. And then she wasn't in movies again until 2018, and now she's been in kind of movies since then every couple years or whatever. TV wise, she was also in Lost. She was so that's another bonus point for
Jax.
her. Jack's
She was in.
wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um and she well, she was in Curb recently. Okay. Interesting. Wheel of Fortune as herself. I wonder, is she like a
Probably celebrity,
contestant?
or maybe they did a celebrity Wheel of Fortune
Yeah,
thing
maybe.
charity. I know she did a lot of work with the girls from Modern Family when they were going through some issues that they had.
Hmm.
One of them, Sarah Hyland, with an abusive ex or something, and then what's her name, getting her emancipated from her family, who were like making horrible decisions and like
Mm.
stealing her money and stuff. So she was like a real mom to those two and helped them out a lot during some issues they had. So
Um, yeah, so that is Julie Bowen. We went on a deep dive there. Wendell Pierce and Ron White are in this as well as the cops. So, uh, so after they save Harkin, I think that's when they come up with the plan to each kind of split who's going to kill who, and they get the rat poison for the Coke, they get the peanuts for the shampoo, and then Nick is not Nick, sorry, Kurt is supposed to just take out uh, Julia. We don't know how yet. He's supposed to do recon on her still, and
why would you put peanuts
when
in the shampoo?
because I think their whole reasoning, right, was that he won't have his EpiPen on him in the bathroom, so while he's in the shower. But yeah, I wonder if this would even work. Like just putting peanuts in the shampoo. You'd
Maybe,
have
I
to
don't
kind of
know.
crush them down. I would feel like you'd have to crush them down, not just like shove them in there.
I
Like
have the feeling that Charlie Day's character probably would just put a handful of peanuts inside the
that's what
shampoo
I was
bottle and
thinking. It
shake
looked
it
like he
up.
was
Like
doing. But
I
when they
can't
came up with the
imagine.
plan, I
I,
thought
I
he was just gonna like crush them and put them in there, mix them up.
I can't imagine he's out there with a mortar and pestle and he's gonna put it in there,
No.
grind it down, and put it in there and shake it up. I imagine, like, okay, I think maybe because I imagine, okay, let's say that this works and he does die. He's either gonna die in the shower or not far from the shower, right? Because
Yeah.
it seems like the peanuts don't take a ton of time to have an effect on him, right? So maybe it would
Yeah,
because
the
he
quick
didn't
effect.
because he only touched the he started going
The
in the
rapper that had it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe it would. But okay, so he dies in the shower or crawling out of the shower, right? So obviously they might collect the stuff from the shower. I can't imagine it would take long for them to like pick up the shampoo bottle and hear a handful of peanuts rattling in a goddamn shampoo bottle.
Yeah,
And
but
it
I
just
would think number one suspect would be
the
Julie
wife.
Bowen, right?
Yeah, it's always a wife. If
Yeah.
there's if anytime there's a domestic issue, it's always this. It's okay. It's
The
either
spouse is the number one suspect.
yeah the spouse or it's someone the spouse was having an affair with. And
Right.
apparently, Julie Bowen's character, that was a lot of people. So that police station is going to be pretty full of them trying to figure out who put the peanuts in his thing. But okay, I'm glad we're on the same thing of like, I don't think he realizes he probably should crush those up. And he, like, yeah, I can just see a half a shampoo bottle full of full whole peanuts.
Yeah. Um and while Nick's out there waiting for Bobby Pellet to go to sleep and he has the rat poison, he's going to go. But Harkin pulls up because while they were in Harkin's apartment or house, they found a cell phone. They took it with them to Harkin's house, uh, and it fell out of his pockets, out of Kurt's pocket while they were running out of the room. Um, so Harkin sees this, thinks it's his wife's lover, goes over to Bobby Pellet's house and shoots him twice. And Nick sees this and takes off, and he gets caught by a red light camera. And this is when they're all at the, I guess, TGI Fridays. They get back in the car, and the cops pull them over and take them in for some questioning. Uh, this is where we get Wendell Pierce, who's going to be Perry White in Superman later this year, and Ron White as the detectives. And they are interrogating Dale, Kurt, and Nick here. And this is the clip I used for. This is the clip I pulled for the like what we're talking about in the last episode, because I just love this exchange of Nick trying to come up with some sort of reason. He's like, I was racing, I was drag racing. And Ron White's like in a Prius. And this is the most Michael Bluth delivery here of the, well, I don't win a lot. Like, that was just A+ delivery from Jason Bateman here.
Yeah, that's picture perfect of like, I don't know what I was expecting, but I
Yeah.
don't know what I expected. Yeah, that's that's the thing. His deadpan humor is so great.
Yes. Yeah, he can make any role work if he's, doing that pretty much. And then they're like, then we find out you're hanging out with this freaky fucker here, and it's Dale because of his sex offender. Then we have them say, and then we find you with this guy whose boss is dead. And I love Sudeikis's delivery here too of the, oh my god, Mr. Pellet's dead. Like, my boss is dead. Like, oh my god. And the, uh, where were you at? Like, then they start turning on each other. Well, where were you at? He's like, I was having sex, murdering some ass. This exchange here, I just love these three together doing this. But yeah, so
Once again, Jennifer Aniston. Yeah, he went out there to go do some recon. I don't
and
know.
she's eating, what did they say? She started off with like an ice cream, was it? And then
Yeah,
the
eating phallic
banana,
foods or something like that.
then the hot dog. And they're like in that order, and he's like cold to hot. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely the wrong order. You got to start with the hot dog first, obviously. But once again, Jennifer Aniston. Not really sure how many guys are going to be able to rein it in with that one.
And she knows he's watching and just invites him in. um yeah, so because they're like, yeah, we're not gonna go through with it, right? Because Dale was already having second thoughts. Nick was having second thoughts, and then he said, yeah, it'd be tough for me to now kill Julia. And they're like, what do you mean? And that's when he reveals that he had sex with her.
Look,
um
not gonna lie, that might be the most realistic thing, where he's in the shower and he's like, I don't know if I can go through with this, man.
yeah, like before, they were just talking in hypotheticals and stuff, and now that it's actually time to do it, do you actually have what it takes? And they do not. They do not want to go through with it. Um, so Dale comes in handy here. This was set up earlier too, that they love, him and his fiance love watching Law and Order, and he realizes from how they say, something. He's like, oh, well, you're not actually arresting us. You don't have sufficient evidence, and he's just like totally Law and Ordering them, and they're free to go for now. Um, so now the plan, instead of becoming killing each other's bosses, the plan is to get Harkin to confess. They go back to Motherfucker, who gives them the idea of like getting them to confess on tape. And they make the mistake of giving this tape uh to Kurt. And when they are finally going to, I love the surprise party part here too, because I don't like surprises. You like surprises,
I don't mind. I've never
Casey?
had a surprise party, but I don't mind surprises for the most part. Just,
I've had a surprise party where people did not jump out and yell surprise, and it was better. I was like told to go over to my parents' house. I thought we were just celebrating my birthday for like with each other. And then as I walk up the steps of the deck, I start seeing more people there. And like the big surprise was that my sister, who's out of state, was there, and it was, nice. But nobody jumped out and yelled surprise, which I would probably react like Kevin Spacey here, where he is pissed off. I do not want surprises like that. Uh, I would also worry that I'm gonna have like a heart attack or something too. But maybe she's trying to kill him as well, right? Maybe Julie Bowen's character is trying to off her spouse. Um, but then you have Kurt just. It wasn't enough to have Julia. He now wants Harkin's wife, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a model or whatever," and really talking her up.
Look, once again, Julie Bowen, very beautiful woman. So
She is, yeah.
uh, it was great because right after I watched this, goddamn computers, my YouTube algorithm sent me a bunch of Modern Family stuff again, and one of them was the episode where her and Phil, it had been a while since they had been intimate with each other.
Mm,
So you had Julie Bowen talking about how it's been a while since we, like she's making all the sounds and the motions and
right.
everything, and it was just like she's a great actress too, but
Yeah, I was just watching the one right before this where the kids walk in on them having sex, and she's like mortified. Um, but yeah, she's great. And her and Kurt go into the bathroom and have sex. But Nick and Dale are confronting Harkin, and he confesses to it, and they think he's there behind them. They didn't double check here, and they don't have it on tape. So now it becomes a chase here, and they're talking to Gregory, the OnStar guy, as they're getting chased by the cops. They mention being chased by the cops as well, or that the cops are after them, and he has to shut it off, like shut down their car. Harkin rams into them, and they think that it's on the tape recorder. That they realize, oh my god, we got it on the tape recorder, and the police are ready to arrest these people. Harkin shoots himself, throws them the gun, which Dale catches,
well,
and
you know what? So I'm of two
they're gonna
separate.
look at the angle of the shot, right? I mean, I feel like that would be
Eventually, that would come into play, right? But I'm of two separate thoughts on the thing, right? So, A, he throws him the gun. One of them. So yeah, you probably shouldn't catch the gun after he just shot himself, right? But let's
right.
be realistic. We've all seen, and it may not be totally as realistic as it appears, of like a gun falling and going off. So I think most people's instinct, especially with a gun, would be to catch it because they're afraid, like it's gonna hit the ground and it's gonna
And
go
go
off and
off.
someone else is gonna get shot, right?
True.
Like, not saying that's correct, but I think that is an instinct people would have. So I'm of two thoughts of like, oh yeah, he's got to catch a gun because otherwise he's afraid it's gonna go off. And then the other half of my brain's like, well, why did he just catch the gun? The other guy just shot himself with it. Like, damn it.
Right. And then they're about to get in jail. It's becoming real for them. They're all like, "Oh my god, we're really going to jail." But Gregory chimes in and says that all of this conversation after the accidents are recorded due to safety or whatever. And we hear Harkin, clearly say he's going to shoot them like he shot Pellet, and they're able to uh, get away here, get free. Um, then you kind of get like the fast forward part here, right? Where they're all kind of happier at their jobs. None of them are the boss. Like Kurt was in line to become the boss, but he lets Marge become the boss because she's the most senior. And then he makes the mistake of asking if she needs any help for the baby, in which she is not pregnant. So
Yikes.
off to a great start already with the new bosses. Same thing with we have Bob Newhart show up here, and he's
Yeah,
got somebody in his trunk.
that came from out of nowhere. Well, one, Bob Newhart in general came from out of nowhere.
Yeah,
And then the fact that there's somebody in his freaking trunk, like, what is going on?
yeah. So under, yeah, it's going great. We just lost Bob Newhart last year, actually. So, um, sad day there. And then we have Dale getting Julia, getting one up on Julia here with getting their friend from earlier who was in the Fridays with them at the bar asking for hand jobs. He uh, is acting like he's sedated, right? Then they have motherfucker recording this interaction, and this is the new blackmail that he has over Julia. And he says, "I'm going to take a long honeymoon. You're going to pay for it." And it seems like he gets his way here. But yeah, so they're all kind of happier as we get through here. You know who else was in this movie? Did you notice this at all? That Meghan Markle appeared.
I did not.
She was the FedEx girl that Kurt was hitting on, saying that you like, aren't you a model or you can't be just a FedEx girl or something. Delivering a package to his work. I saw her, and I've seen this movie a couple times and did not ever know. I didn't know who Meghan Markle was at this time, but this time I watched it and I was literally like, "That's Meghan Markle." Like that's crazy. Um, but yeah. Oh, and the guy that voices Gregory Atmanad, right, is Brian George, who was Babu Bhatt on Seinfeld.
Ah,
So,
okay.
so that's great. But yeah, so that's the end of the movie here. I just have a couple of notes here as well. When they were casting the role of Dale, Ashton Kutcher was in talks, and I
Ooh,
cannot,
no,
I
no,
can't
no, no.
picture Kutcher in this
That
role.
would have not been good.
No. Tom Cruise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Jeff Bridges were approached to take the role of David Harkin, played by Spacey.
If Cruz hadn't done Tropic Thunder, I could see I could see him playing Harkin. Um, who you said Philip Seymour Hoffman? Who's the third one?
Jeff Bridges. I can see Bridges the most out of
Maybe
all these,
Bridges.
really.
Yeah, I can see if not for Spacey, I can see Bridges doing that.
I think Philip Seymour Hoffman probably could have done an okay job on it. I mean, he's a great actor, but I don't know. Some other actors that were in negotiations to star, I don't know. This was during the whole 6 years of development, so I don't know when it was or what roles they would have been. But Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn, Matthew McConaughey, Ryan Reynolds, Dax Shepard, and Johnny Knoxville were also all in talks at some point. Um,
I could see Knoxville being Dale. Um,
yeah, maybe. Yeah. I would think Dax would have been like Jason Sudeikis' role, and Ryan Reynolds would have been Bateman's role, or Ryan
yeah,
Reynolds could have been Sudeikis' role as well.
honestly, it with Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, I could see Vince Vaughn being. Yeah, I could see
I
Vince Vaughn. Well,
feel like he has some of
honestly,
that same dry delivery at times, Vince Vaughn.
yeah,
So
and especially I could see him being a faster talking Bateman in Bateman's role, and maybe Owen
yeah,
Wilson being Sudeikis.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I could see like Owen Wilson hitting on Julie
Just about,
Bowen.
but in
Yeah,
all fairness, I could also see Vince Vaughn playing that portion a
doing
little
that.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
So some of those I could see flip flop or whatever. But honestly, Johnny Knoxville, I think the only thing he could have done was probably Dale's part.
Yeah, so it was filmed in around L.A. That makes the budget even seem even better, really, because it can be expensive filming in California. So, and the production team mostly attempted to find locations that people haven't seen hundreds of times in movies and TV. Um, which I think they did a good job. Like, I haven't seen anything in this that I was like, oh, that's definitely
Yeah.
also seen in like this movie or whatever.
Oh, that looks familiar. Oh, I've been there.
Right.
Well, that's yeah. No, no, that's definitely
All right. So Rotten Tomatoes, 69%. Um, the
solid T.
Metacritic's 57 out of 100. Let me just check the IMDb here. I think it was like six something.
6.5,
Um,
6.6, something like that.
6.9 on that,
Nice.
and the cinema score was a B plus. So no surprise, probably had this at 5 stars. I could probably bump it down a little bit if I needed to. But what was your thoughts when you watched Horrible Bosses?
So, uh, like I said, I knew I'd heard of the movie, I saw it, something that piqued me, but I just never got around to going to see it. Um, I'm kind of curious as to what when I remember I asked you about the unrated version. Uh,
Yeah, I'll see
kind of
if I can
curious.
find.
I think I read like the unrated version just had some more descriptive scenes with a couple of things like there's no Jennifer Aniston nudity or anything like that in there. So anybody might be hearing about that thinking that not gonna happen.
That would
Um,
already been all over the internet anyway.
yeah. Uh, I could give this probably a 4, maybe 4.5. It was funny. I found myself laughing quite a bit. It was an enjoyable experience. Um, maybe I should have gone and see it sooner at some point, but I just never got around to it. Um, I could, if something we've forgotten, um, if this were on sale of like I could see like a 2 pack of this and Horrible Bosses 2 for like $10 on Blu-ray or something. I might pick it up.
Yeah, so it looks like there is uh 8 more minutes or something of runtime on the unrated version. Um, I haven't seen too much of a good explanation of like what the differences are.
I could see maybe them in the bar or Applebee's or whatever it is. A couple of things like that. Maybe a couple of scenes get extended here and there, but
8 minutes long, these prolonged scenes mostly consist of additional dialogue and extensions of already existing scenes. Sometimes alternative footage was used, and completely new scenes are rarely seen. So,
okay.
yeah, not much. Um, I probably have it since it's also like I have the Blu-ray, so I think part of it probably came with it. I don't know, but
It might be in the special features, even if it's not the unrated version.
right, right. Um, but yeah, no, I think this is a fun movie. I did watch the sequel, not in theaters because um, I don't know. I don't know why I missed it in theaters. But I watched it from Redbox when I lived in Florida, and it was not as good. From what I remember, I've only watched the sequel once, um, so
In all
don't
fairness,
remember too much.
when you have a hit like this, because I think I saw too that one of the reasons it was taking so long, they have what's called the blacklist out here, where it's like a list of like
Yes,
screenplays that are a list of like screenplays that are going around that people have like a bunch of interest in or whatever. This was one of the movies that was on there at one point for a while. Um, so when you have like an unexpected hit like this that pops up, you said it was made for like 35. How much did it make? 100 and something million or
it made like 200. I thought it was 200 million. Yeah,
yeah. So
209.
you know when you get a pretty decent hit like that, um, honestly, because nobody was expecting it either. Um, to get when the sequel comes out, it's gonna be kind of hard to get that same. Not that the cast and crew can't try and recreate what they did, but from an audience perspective, like to find an unexpected hit like that, it's kind of harder to replicate that again. The Hangover did it somewhat with the second one, but part three they definitely
Went off the edge. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. They bring back almost every character too. You have Jason Bateman, Sudeikis, Charlie Day, Jennifer Aniston, Jamie Foxx, Kevin Spacey. Then they also had Christoph Waltz and Chris Pine to the movie. Um, but yeah, so if you're ever interested, it's out there. But for me, Horrible Bosses number one is better and is my one of my favorite comedies of recent times. I say that it's 15 years already at this point, but still recent to me. I would say. Um, Okay, so let me go through stats real quick. So I did the tally. I wanted to add a new stat saying uh, which ones I've seen in theaters because this is one of them. So plus one. I've seen 7 of the movies I've given you in theaters. That's this one, Horrible Bosses, Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, Ghostbusters: Afterlife, The Suicide Squad, Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse, and Rogue One: A Star Wars Story are the films that I've seen in theaters that I've provided you. We got a plus one on Jason Bateman, Jason Sudeikis, Charlie Day, Jennifer Aniston, Kevin Spacey, Colin Farrell, Donald Sutherland, and Jamie Foxx, all with one film. I added all of those because those are all actors that I can see popping up again
Yeah.
sometime. And I added one plus one for franchise. It has a sequel, so I guess there is a Horrible Bosses franchise now. But so we're at 18 if we're
You know what
doing
I
that.
see him doing? Since you speak of that, I could see him in a couple of years or whatever making a remake or a reboot, or like another portion with someone else in their horrible role.
Yeah,
Like I could see them, especially if they can't get the same people back, or I don't know what happened in the sequel, who would be around, whatever. I could see him kind of redoing it in another way, you know.
yeah.
Goes back.
Oh, another thing I want to point out is I don't know how much this movie works nowadays when they're sneaking around in all these people's houses and stuff. And like most people now have ring cameras or cameras inside the house, they would have been pretty quickly discovered.
Well, not only that, the sexual harassment
Yeah.
uh, by Jennifer Aniston, um, Colin Farrell's character. I don't know how much he would have been able to get. Well, you never know, but it's up in there how much he would have been able to get away with trying to run the company after his dad like that after his dad died.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, a lot of things, and it's only been 15 years, like you said, but it seems like a lifetime ago. A lot of things
Yeah.
have changed in that time. So,
All right. So what are we watching for next time?
all right, so we're gonna connect the string to something else. Um, have you ever had a near death experience, Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're willing to discuss that, we can discuss that next time. If not, because it's a near death experience, some people don't like talking about that. Totally get it. No big deal. But we're going to connect back to the X Files from last time, and we're going to watch the first Final Destination movie.
Okay.
As I stated before, this was originally written to be an episode of the X Files, and somewhere along the lines, it turned into a feature film. And I ask about a near death experience because the premise behind the movie is a high school class is going on a field trip to Paris, which this happened a lot in the 2000s and 90s and 80s, where these senior classes would take these massive trips to like Rome and England and Paris and all these other things.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where these schools are, but I've never seen anything like that in my life, but whatever. Uh, Somehow, something happens. A small group of them end up getting kicked off the airplane to Paris. After they get off the plane explodes in midair, killing everyone else on board. Obviously, there's some trauma that they have to deal with and things, but eventually they realize, um, unless you're Special Agent Dana Scully from the X Files, you can't escape death. They were supposed to have been on that plane. They were supposed to have died, but because they didn't, ultimately now death is after them. Like not in a physical form, but the essence or what is like they were meant to die. Like I said, they were meant to die in that airplane. They did not. They cannot escape death. Everyone will die eventually. And then they start dying off one by one. And this is their story and how they deal with that and what happens as they're trying to evade and escape from death. Um, it is definitely a product of its time in the late 90s. So this is definitely not a movie young Jordan, very young Jordan, probably like 2 or 3 year old Jordan would have seen, or should have been seen.
What year was it?
First time I remember seeing it, I want to say was 2001 when
2000.
I was in Bosnia. So I saw it on DVD in Bosnia in 2001. So
Yes. So it came out in 2000. So I was 9. Yeah. 8, turning 9.
yeah, so 92. Okay, yeah, so yeah, definitely not something you would have or should have been seeing at that age. But it is definitely a product of its time. Um, and it spawned a franchise, which we thought died a few years back, maybe about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But we're getting a new one here soon.
The final one, supposedly, right?
I don't know about that. They've said that a couple of times
They
about
said that a few times, right?
Final
Um,
Destination. And in all fairness, look, this is the kind of thing that you can continue on with because it doesn't. This isn't like a Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, where the villain, the the antagonist
right.
has a physical manifestation, right? There's no Freddy Krueger, there's no Jason, there's no Pinhead, there's no devil, there's no physical aspect of it. It's just death. Like I said, everyone dies eventually. So when you try to escape death, like what happens from there? So this is
Yeah.
something they could continuously just pump these things out every couple of years if they wanted to, because they don't have to worry about like, oh, Freddy's jokes aren't as funny anymore, Jason's not as fast, or we have to recast the actor who plays Jason because he's older now, or he got in legal trouble with some DUIs and some a dude in his trunk or whatever the case is, right? They can just go with the actual aspect of, oh, you can't escape death. So I don't have high hopes for it, but it'll be interesting to see what your thoughts on it are.
I have some spoilers that I already know on this regarding the film before this one. The film that's coming out now. The latest movie that has been released. I
The,
know how that movie ends and how it ties into this
yeah,
movie.
that way it's been a while, and the spoilers for that one, and we'll talk about it next
Yeah.
week or next time. The spoilers for that one have been out for a while, and it was a really interesting way to tie it into the franchise. Um, and like I said, we'll talk about it. But some people were able to catch on, some people weren't. And then when it does tie all together, it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense
Mm-hmm.
now. So
So we'll see. This franchise has intrigued me. So we'll see how I
really,
feel about it next
I
time.
didn't I
Yeah.
didn't know you might have had an interest in it. I just like I said, I know we're kind of sometimes tying things together, and I was like, oh, since this is tied to the X Files in a way, like let's just go on with that. I didn't know you had some
Right.
interest in the franchise.
Yeah.
So I will also say this is probably the best place to start. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this movie, the first in release order, right? Um, it's the best one to start. The other ones are interesting, but eventually we'll talk about it next week. They just all it seems like all they wanted to do was find other ways to kill people in these other movies, like different interesting ways. Uh, there
Right.
is
Right.
there is a scene in the second part that traumatized an entire generation of people.
Yeah. The
Um,
log truck thing. I know about that.
yeah, that you can go online and there's still a whole bunch of people who have no desire to to drive behind a log truck if they see one on the highway because of that movie.
Alrighty. Well, that's what we'll be talking about next week. Have a great rest of your
Just
week. You can follow us. Oh no,
just
2 weeks
Final
from now.
Destination, not the Final Destination, because I think the last one is called the Final Destination, but it's just
I hate when
Final
they do that.
Destination.
Just put the number or put a subtitle. Don't keep like the Fast and Furious movies where it's like Fast and Furious. Too Fast, Too Furious. Then it's like Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Then it's like
Okay.
Fast 4, Furious 5, Fast and 6. Like
Yeah.
just put stuff in order the right way,
Give me a
please.
reason so like if I know like I know what I'm watching. Like if it's like Fast Five, I get it. Okay, so that's probably the fifth in the series. Cool. You know, Tokyo Drift.
Right, exactly.
Okay, maybe it's a spinoff. Too Fast, Too Furious, I get it. But yeah, when you start getting weird things or like okay, prime example, Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad. Really,
Hmm.
really, you couldn't. Nothing else you could have done with that title. Couldn't have gave us something else.
Nope. They wanted to make it as much as a, I guess, soft reboot as they could. But yeah, like those type of things. Yeah, let's get rid of that. All right. Well, you can follow us on all of our social links in the description below. Comment on Spotify or comment on the YouTube if you're watching us there. Let us know what you thought of Horrible Bosses and what your thoughts are on Final Destination. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time.